Hello and welcome to episode 26 of the NF Show Top This. I'm your host for this week, Evan Campbell, and with me, as always, is the ever lovely Noah Ward.
It's the no news dance. Yep.
That's Noah right there. He is kind of misleading you for a surprise coming up here in the intro. There is some news to talk about. Some big news dropped earlier today with Smash Brothers and character reveals. And right when we were recording episode 25, there was some Dragon Quest X news that I found very intriguing that we'll talk about. But the main topic for this episode and what Noah is referring to is we're going to list not our top 5 3DS games, but our Elite 8 3DS games. We figure the system's been out a lot longer than the Wii U, and let's be honest, the game library is, I would say, much better, to put it lightly. And part of that's because people have had more time to develop games for it. And then finally, we will finish off this episode with your fantastic feedback, which is always a joy to go through. And we have plenty of emails and YouTube comments to go through, which is going to be really fun to address. But first off, are you ready, Noah? Is Toad ready? Is Mario ready? Is Luigi ready?
Yes, they are ready. I found out something really magical about my Toad figurine, which I think you can see. Let me see. A little bit. There he is.
Yeah, we can see him.
Yeah. Toad's arms move. And something I didn't point out before is his hands are clenched in tiny little fists. And when I got him, of course, his arms are down. So that means he's all like, my hands are clenched in really tight little fists, and I'm smiling. Which I think is Toad Rage kind of esque. But when you take those little fists and you put them up in the air, it's Happy Toad. It's like triumphant, yeah, Toad. And so that's how you're going to be seeing Toad going forward, triumphantly fist pumping or something like that.
And if you're a listener, be sure to check out our stream on YouTube so you can see what Noah and I are talking about. He has 3 figurines on the back of his desk that are in the frame of his picture. So it's always fun to see how he rearranges the figurines and what they are capable of doing. But even though Toad's fists are clenched like he's ready to fight, he is not one of the new fighters in Super Smash Bros. For Wii U and 3DS. Instead, the focus today was on Fire Emblem Awakening, which I think came as probably a pleasant surprise for a lot of people. The big reveal was Captain Falco, who's returning, and he was kind of mixed up with Lucina, Robin, and male and female Robin characters from Fire Emblem Awakening. So those are the 3 new characters, plus Chrome is part of a Final Smash. I think people weren't sure if it was Robin or Lucina's Final Smash. Chrome actually won't be playable, but will be part of a Final Smash in the upcoming fighting game. So were you surprised by seeing the Fire Emblem Awakening characters, Noah? Who were you expecting to be revealed?
I actually was expecting Fire Emblem Awakening, and as predictable as it was, and I think a lot of people were expecting this, and I think that Sakurai even played to it in his video, was I expected Chrom, the main, well, pretty much like the main support character for your hero, to be that character. Even though I didn't really want him to be there because we already have both, gosh, what are they, Ike and Marth, I think, or is it Roy? Anyways,
Yeah.
we already have 2, and one of them's from a single GameCube game, or maybe like a GameCube and a DS game, and I thought that they should just roll that one out, just to expire him, because it's just too many characters from the same franchise all using swords, and it just feels really repetitive, redundant, and a lot of fan reaction actually was along those lines, saying that Lucina, or however the heck these people's names are said, is just a clone of Marth. She uses all the exact same moves, she has the same abilities, and therefore she's not exciting to some of the Smash purists out there. They were just very disappointed. They wanted a character from a different franchise, from potentially a different publisher, and instead we get not 1 but 2 Fire Emblem characters. Now, the inclusion of the player character Robin was pretty cool, especially that you can choose male or female, but much like with Mass Effect, when you saw the commercials for that game, or you saw people's videos online, it's not really your Mass Effect. When you take a character that is very customizable. I look at Robin, I'm like, who is that? That was my first reaction because that's not what my character looks like, and my character's not named Robin. I named my character Noah, of course. And it's just like, oh, that's not the Robin design that I even like. So it's kind of weird, but at least what's cool with Robin is while he does attack with the sword, he does have an additional extra ability with his spell book that has a limited number of fires, which is kind of cool. I just feel that Fire Emblem is overrepresented in the game now. Granted, there's a lot of Mario characters, but I kind of expect that in a Nintendo game. I don't expect a single kind of lower tier franchise. I mean, it's an excellent franchise, but it's certainly not a phenomenon like Mario or Zelda. Getting 4 different characters in the game, it just feels like overkill. But that was kind of my reaction. What did you think?
I was excited just to see that Fire Emblem. It makes me think that Nintendo's going to put a bigger push behind that franchise. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a Fire Emblem game announced for Wii U possibly in the future, which has kind of got me thinking why they're putting this big push. I know that Intelligent Systems is obviously working on Codename Steam right now for 3DS, but they have worked on multiple projects in the past, so I'm curious if we'll see. I mean, what am I saying here? Fire Emblem Cross Shin Megami Tensei could be the Wii U game, and this has helped pushing that, and those characters play a big part in that game. So I guess I should take a step back. But it's cool to see that series getting its own limelight for a change with the Marios and Zeldas. But I can understand people who are like, where's Ness? Where's Luke from the Earthbound/Mother series? Where are more third-party characters? And I feel like that's just a thirst that you'll never be able to quench with fans. And when it comes to Smash Brothers, everyone just wants so many characters that you'll just never be able to please everyone. So I was pretty excited for it. I wasn't too upset about it. I thought Robin, like you, did look like the more intriguing character, having the ability to use the spell book and use like thunder spells and everything like that. I think it could make for a very entertaining character. And then Captain Falcon, it was really cool to hear that. It sounded like the same voice sample from like the past 10 years. I didn't say it all the way, but it was like Falcon, and like got interrupted, and it just sounded like low, crappy quality, like they just pulled it. And I think that's brilliant. I'm glad that they don't re-record that, because I think that little soundbite's so ingrained into every player's head at this point. But that wasn't the only announcement with Smash Brothers. Sakurai also teased before these character reveals that Rayman will be an assist trophy, which, once again, that kind of misled people to think that, will it be a third-party character? But Rayman is an assist trophy, and it's a 3D. It's not the more recent Rayman Origins or Legends / type model. It's a 3D Rayman. What did you think about that? Because you're the big Rayman fan.
I thought it was kind of interesting. It was really unexpected, and that's because usually what we see in the assist trophies, or the trophies that you can win, whatever it is, it's this really in-depth kind of minutia-focused history of all of these games across Nintendo's past. And if you see a third-party character represented, it's usually because that third-party character is in the game in some way, or their franchise is in the game. So it was kind of cool, also surprising given all the drama that's happened with Ubisoft and the Rayman game, that Rayman is even being allowed in the game. I could imagine Nintendo's top suit saying, no way, we're not going to promote them whatsoever after all the junk they made us go through with that Rayman game. And what Ubisoft most recently said is like, oh, we've got Wii U games on the shelf. We're just going to wait and see on those. So it was kind of surprising. Maybe it's an olive branch of sorts to Ubisoft. I'm not really sure. I also think it could be a sign that we'll see many more third-party characters show up as trophies. And the twinge in my stomach was like, oh man, this means that Bayonetta will be in the game, but she's just going to be an assist trophy now.
That's going to be... I really hope Bayonetta's in the game. But I feel like we kind of talked about it. Zero Suit Samus is like the equivalent of her. This like speedy, action-packed with like the jet-powered heels. I feel like that kind of makes it unlikely Bayonetta will be there. But I really hope to see her there. And I think good on Ubisoft. I'm curious, like you, was this Nintendo reaching out to them, or Ubisoft asking for some kind of promotion, because I think any character that gets into Super Smash Brothers, it just elevates that series and that character so much higher. I bet so many people have been introduced to Mega Man and to Pac-Man just through Super Smash Brothers that may have never heard of these characters before.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and I feel I love what they've done with both Mega Man and Pac-Man. I'm so excited to play as them. I love the stages, and that's what I want more of. I don't want 4 Fire Emblem characters. I would even rather have Game & Watch officially confirmed, or Ganondorf or Wario brought back. And I'm just worried because I had the impression that we were going to have a smaller roster, or not many more characters than what we have now. And it just
That's not
seems something
fair.
that's kind of like, eh, it's just like, no, why are you using those slots for these characters? But Mega Man, Sonic, Pac-Man, regardless, we know they're in there, and I'm really looking forward to playing as all of those.
And that's not Sakurai. I feel like every project he's like, I'm gonna rein it in. I can't do this to myself again. I can't like make this and every time the games he creates are just so packed full of content. And not only
Yes.
like just weird option content, like fully featured stuff that's so cool. So it's just exciting. We're getting months away from that, and that'll be such a big release on the 3DS and Wii U. In the meantime, over the weekend, people were playing Super Smash Bros. Melee, which is now, I believe, 13 years old, or going on 13 years this holiday, which is crazy to believe.
Hmm.
And that was played at EVO 2014. I watched probably an hour and a half or two of the top 5, the top 6, I can't remember, yesterday evening. And Mango, I wanted to give congrats to Mango for winning the Super Smash Bros. Melee tournament. He beat out Hungry Box, who was using a mean Jigglypuff throughout the tournament, and actually defeated one of the best players, Armada, which is really cool. So I recommend, Noah, I don't know if you watched it or any of our viewers did, but I'd recommend watching some competitive Smash Brothers Melee because it's such a different game, and a lot of people are like, oh, there's no items and it's not 4 players, but it's just crazy what people can do with these characters and the play styles they utilize, and hopefully we'll see the new Smash Brothers kind of embraced within the fighting game community later this year.
Yeah, I agree. And also, where is Jigglypuff? I love playing as Jigglypuff. I need some Jigglypuff.
Jiggly, Jigglypuff, I feel like people are like, oh, it's a really good like beginner character because you can basically jump forever and float. But it's so cool to see these pro players how they use them and how they're moving around the screen. It's really fascinating to watch. So it's cool to see Jigglypuff be this like hardcore, like unbeatable player and end up in second place. The other big news that literally happened, I think, while we were recording last week, Noah, was that Dragon Quest X is coming to 3DS. Now, I wish I could just say Dragon Quest X was coming to North America and Europe, but that's not the case. But it is coming to 3DS. And what's most interesting about this is it's going to be a game that's streamed to your 3DS to run on the handheld. So this isn't all just working from like a cart or download. You're actually streaming some of the content. So the visuals are going to be on par with like the Wii U and Wii. So it's going to be one of the best looking 3DS games, but it's also one of the first games to actually be using kind of like a streaming type service like a Netflix, or kind of like what PlayStation Now is promising users on TVs and PlayStation 3s and PS Vitas.
I wonder if, because we're streaming everything, they're going to recommend that we get a LAN connector or adapter.
I'm sure. I'm really curious how. I mean, this is a game that is an MMO RPG, and there is a subscription service in Japan. There's no release for North America or Europe. So you're mainly playing online, and I'm really curious to see how the streaming works out because it's through Square Enix. I'm curious to see what kind of role Nintendo had. But if anything, that this is coming to 3DS now, you've got a big user base. So I think the game is now playable on PC, Wii U, 3DS, and it is also on smartphones in Japan and utilizes the same streaming technology from what I was reading. But I'm hopeful. I'm always hopeful about Dragon Quest X for years. I don't know why I'm still hopeful. But I'm hopeful that the 3DS signifies that we could finally see it release over here and also in Europe. my fingers are crossed. I feel like it's promising. Because if they localize it, now there's a 3DS and Wii U version, so there's more places they could sell on top of a possible PC version over here across the ocean.
And there was just a massive investment. I mean, this game has been worked on for years. It's been developed for multiple platforms. It just makes sense to put a portion of extra money further. Definitely not as much as it would cost to fully develop the game, but another chunk of money out there to localize the game, market it, and release it overseas so they can really maximize their investment. That is, of course, assuming that the previous Dragon Quest game did really good that came out on DS, but I think it just makes sense to get it out there if they can.
And it's really curious to me, Nintendo, especially the Wii U version. You have a company that's had problems getting content out here in North America and Europe, and you have these dry spells. You would think Nintendo would say, you know what, we'll put money toward this. Dragon Quest is a recognized game brand. It may not be the biggest game brand, and we'll put money behind this to get another game out to fill a slot. So hopefully it's something we'll still see happen, and I'd be curious because I see a subscription service necessarily working over here, but I'd still like to see the game come over in one way or the other. But enough about games coming out in the future, or if they're going to come out here at all. Let's talk about what we've been playing, and when I say we, I mean I, because Noah hasn't had any time to game over the past week.
Yeah, that's true. I'm sorry, everybody. I had an extended social calendar, and it got in the way of my gaming.
Noah's too popular and cool for games, is what he's trying to say. Unlike me, who has 0 friends except for my consoles that I just hug and say hello to every day.
I'm your friend, Evan.
Sure you are. Well, I am playing a game that I promised a couple of weeks ago that I'm actually reviewing for NF Magazine, and the upcoming issue is Armello, which has been an indie game in development for a long time. It's a Wii U exclusive about Armello, who is kind of a red armadillo-type creature mixed with a fox somewhat, who rolls around 3D planets. And it's like a platforming puzzle-type game. And it's pretty unique in that way. And I completed it over the weekend and found the 3D levels. I found it to be pretty cool. I mean, I feel like the controls work really well. Whenever you're using a type of ball to move around, it kind of makes me think back to Marble Madness on the NES, although I know that was on other platforms. And it feels really good to roll around and do some of these challenges. And I feel like the learning curves are done pretty well by indie developer Fuzzy Wuzzy Games. There are quite a few things that I don't like with the game. I don't know if you've seen any of the trailers or anything, Noah, but I think the art style is just super busy and kind of a clash of different elements.
Mm-hmm.
I sum it up as a teaser in my review. I feel like it's like they took Super Mario Galaxy with the 3D kind of shiny graphics, and then they threw Star Fox together with some of the character designs, and they have like little character portraits to do the narrative. And it's like they just threw those together and blended it, like didn't even try to make a cohesive. We're like, this will work, and it just creates this kind of odd concoction that you're looking at. It's not necessarily like the worst thing you've ever seen, but it's just like, I don't get how these elements go together.
It sounds like it's at least distracting.
Yeah, it's just busy. I feel very over-designed. I feel like the game in general is pretty over-designed. They throw in 2D levels that they call secret levels, and you actually have to find them in the 3D environments. But then these 2D secret stages, you have to beat 1 or 2 to go on to the next set of 3D worlds. So these secret stages are actually required stages, and the 2D levels aren't fun. They're pretty bland, and as well as the 3D levels control, the 2D ones are imprecise and just don't feel quite right. So that was a bit infuriating to play those.
It was infuriating. Did you clench your fist really tight like Toad does?
I did shake my gamepad, and I was like, don't shake the game. I wish the gamepad was like, don't shake the gamepad, and you're just like, ah. The game has a really strong 3D platforming concept. It's not like the best thing ever, but it's at least unique, and there's cool ideas there. And I feel like the narrative and kind of visual elements they're going from these 2D levels get in the way. The game gets in the way of itself. But I feel like if you can kind of get over that, and maybe you're someone that'll like the 2D levels, I just was like, get me back to these 3D worlds. It's a unique and intriguing title, and it's cool to see it as a Wii U exclusive. The other game I've been playing, I still haven't beat, sadly, because I know I promised it, was Shovel Knight. And I don't know if it was playing Armillo or just coming back to it after a week or two, or maybe it's just the later stages, but Shovel Knight is freaking good. It's really good. And we talked about it for a bit. The writing in Shovel Knight's really good, and I talked about last week, It'll Do's writing's really good. Once you play a couple of games that have just really smart and clever writing and do a good job of kind of leading the player on or just having these funny jokes, and then you have Armillo, which just has bad writing, just bland and bad writing. Like, in that, I mean, it detracts because of the narrative. It's too chatty in certain sections, but it just shows you how, if you have someone that's a good writer, that it can just really make the whole experience, elevate that whole experience somewhat. But Shovel Knight just continues to be fun. I'm sure I'm going to finish. I'm sure. Why would you believe anything I say?
Lies.
But I plan on finally finishing that up because it's a fantastic. I definitely recommend anyone with a Wii U pick that up, especially if you're maybe getting burnt out with Mario Kart 8 or any other games this summer.
All right. I can respect that. And there's other games that we've played. I would also recommend, if you want a palate cleanser, Stick It to the Man. That was a game previously that I played, since we're promoting indies. And definitely, actually, I think Shovel Knight is also an excellent palate cleanser.
Oh, yeah. And just came out in the past couple weeks. Hopefully we see more of these indie games come out, as we kind of have, once again, on the retail side, a dry spell until next month or is it next month for Hyrule Warriors, or do we actually have to wait until September? I can't remember. It's next month in Japan.
September. Yeah.
It's next month in Japan. Maybe that's where I'm getting mixed up. So, yeah, definitely look at the indie scene, and hopefully we'll get some more eShop sales. And Noah, where are you to? I feel like I've kind of passed the mantle on to you, where you're the one that is now like, give me my Nintendo Direct. We need news. Give me.
Yeah, I'm still waiting for the Nintendo Direct. I'm just a glutton, I guess, because we got a lot of really cool surprises from E3 and updates that were appreciated for games we already knew about. And I've burned off that sugar high, and I need Nintendo Directs. I need more updates on Smash. I need the final information on the extra modes in Wii U. And I want more promotion, maybe of Captain Toad. I don't know. I feel like that's okay. But secretly what I want more indie promotion. I want dates for the indie games. And if there is actually any other surprises to expect from Nintendo itself, I don't expect them. I feel like we clearly see what's ahead of us from a retail perspective. But maybe there are some surprises on the downloadable front. Maybe there's a first-party downloadable title that will come around, kind of like Harmonite or something, just comes out of nowhere and surprises us. So I'm waiting for that in a Nintendo Direct. Yep.
It's got to be. I'm sure there's going to be a Nintendo Direct soon, because there's got to be that 3DS redesign that I keep harping on. Yeah. I'm fully behind that, by the way. I was thinking about that earlier today. And Nintendo, there weren't too many surprising games for this year to kind of push sales to keep them steady year over year. And I was like, that 3DS or 2DS redesign's coming, I believe. Plus, there was kind of that under the radar 3DS firmware update that jumped it. It wasn't like a 7.15 update. It went to 8.0. And only notes Nintendo gave were stability updates. And it's like, you usually don't jump from like that to 8.0. So some people are like, is this a cross-buy functionality? Is there something else that Nintendo is going to pull out with the Nintendo Direct? So lots of wild theories out there, which is always fun. But with that, let's get in to our Elite Eight 3DS games. These are our favorite games, everyone. We're not necessarily saying these are the best games objectively. I don't know how you could even do that, but these are what we personally feel like are the best 3DS games, and obviously we haven't played every single game out there. So be sure, if you don't agree with our list, if you do agree, be sure to give us your feedback. You can email us at show@nfmagazine.com, or you can leave a comment right here on YouTube underneath this video. And with that, Noah, let's start with your list, and I can just pick at it and be like, no, 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 that doesn't belong.
All right. So this is in no particular order, and it actually was hard to limit it down to 8.
Yeah.
And I kind of have a catch-all. I have a cop-out item in here, which comes as no surprise to Evan.
You always have a cop-out. You're always like, and I put a 6 game, or these are my honorable mentions.
Well, yeah, originally we were committed to just doing a top 5 as was requested, and I wrote my top 5, and then there was like 4 or 5 more, and so I made out this list of honorable mentions, and I was throwing all these games into there, and I had to boot up my 3DS because it had been a while. I've got it sitting right here. See, check it out. This is how much I love my 3DS. I've got like a cool little bag for it.
Aw.
And
What are
then
those? What are those buttons? Are those game related, or are they just?
they're like don't do drugs buttons.
Okay.
No, they're like various things. Okay, so if you have an eagle eye, you can see that there are actually some things that don't belong from a Nintendo perspective, because there's some PlayStation icons in there, button icons. But the selection that I was working with, they're just there weren't enough options. But there's some Zelda ones, because there's a Triforce and a Rupee and a key and an Ocarina, and there's a Mega Man tank, and there's some Mario ones. So this is like Oracle of Seasons wand or something like that, and yeah, and then there's like a little arcade coin and 25 slot. And see, it matches so well. And so I like booted this up and said, all right, what have you got for me? Because I know that if I look at just my game cards, I won't have an accurate list, because there are actually a lot of really awesome eShop titles as well.
Oh yeah.
So my game list is a mix of those. There are games that I wanted to put on here. Just know there are games that both Evan and I wanted to put on our list, and we couldn't include it, even though I talked about them quite a bit. No particular order, but going back to one of the very first titles that came out for 3DS, it was a big exclusive. Well, I guess it wasn't right at the beginning, but Resident Evil Revelations was fantastic. I am a big fan of Resident Evil, and I was kind of skeptical how Revelations was going to work, and I was thinking, oh man, I've got to have my dual stick controls to play this Resident Evil game. I'm going to get that gigantic add-on, and I tried it out, and actually I ended up feeling, much to my delight and surprise, that just using the regular 3DS controls was totally sufficient, and it was scary, and it was challenging, it was just the right length, and it had a great story, as great as Resident Evil games can be. Cool voice acting, cool cinematics. I just really loved it a lot and felt, yes, I have made a good decision finally getting the 3DS, because I did wait a while. And I also got Mercenaries, but this was a true, unique, original game, and it was fun, and it also had a great multiplayer component as well. The next game that I have on my list, and this is something that Evan and I reference frequently, is an eShop title. It's an exclusive to 3DS. And I think, Evan, it's about time that we get back to playing this game again, because it's that time of year. It's Attack of the Friday Monsters, which is from Guild 5. It's one of those games that's just really esoteric, because the Guild makes such really cool esoteric ideas into games, but this one was just such an excellent execution of it, that you get to see what it's like to be a kid living in Japan, and it's set in the past, so it's not current times, but there's TV's really big, and they have this, the kid really loves all of these big monster shows, and what's weird is that these giant monster battles actually happen right in town, and they happen on Friday nights, which is kind of weird, this weird mix. And so you have this, I wouldn't say it's a coming of age story per se, but you could see this kid and what his life is like as he's freshly moved to this town, the friends that he makes, they all have these cool personalities, and the other people that are in the town, and just you get to learn about their backgrounds and what makes them the way they are, what makes them behave poorly or nicely, what their insecurities are, and you just see them grow a little bit over this summer. and you try to unravel what is the mystery of these giant monster attacks that occur right outside of town. But Evan and I frequently said that I think Evan said it first, that it's such a cool, heartwarming game that it's something that we could see ourselves coming back to on a regular basis, and it just fits so well with summertime.
Yeah, it's a game that I look forward to playing. I'm definitely gonna find out an hour or two to play. It's a short game, play this summer because I feel like it fills you with like nostalgia. It doesn't like use that to necessarily for its game design, but it just uses it to just make you remember your childhood summers and the fondness you have of playing with friends outside and just spending your summers outside all night. Even when it got dark, you would play games out there with your friends, and it's just cool on kind of tapping in on what a childhood imagination's like and making you remember that. And I find that very heartwarming and touching, and it's one of my favorite 3DS games as well.
My next is another title that completely surprised me, much like Resident Evil Revelations, in terms of its quality, its depth, and the way it just grabbed a hold of me and mandated that I play through the whole game. And that was Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon. I was
Mhm.
not a big fan of Luigi's Mansion on GameCube. I remember being disappointed with it when it
How
was
dare
announced,
you?
and then I got it and I started playing it, and I didn't even finish it. I'm just like, I just don't care. It was not what I was in the mood for or wanted on my GameCube, and I just felt it was kind of lame. And I got older, and it came back, and I'm like, wow, that's kind of interesting. It's way far in the past. And I did eventually finish it. A friend forced me to finish it, by the way. But coming back to it, it's like, wow, this is really fun. I love how contained it is. I love the progression. I love the presentation. The music is fantastic. The little puzzles were great. And I think now I'd reached a point in my life where I was ready for this concept of Luigi's Mansion. I'd had my Mario platforming hunger met many, many times over because that's what I really wanted when Luigi's Mansion was. I'm like, I don't want Luigi's Mansion. I want another Mario platformer game. I've gotten more than enough of that now. And Dark Moon was so well done. It was such a pleasant surprise. I thought, oh man, this game's doomed. It was delayed. It's from kind of a franchise that some people out there don't have a lot of love for, but I think it really surprised everybody and ended up being not only one of Nintendo's best games on 3DS, but one of my favorites.
And it's also, I mean, this is Next Level Games, who has worked with Nintendo before, but I feel like this was one of their best games overall with design. I've really loved the Super Mario Strikers franchise in the past, but the visuals, it just does such a great job incorporating 3D visuals. It has kind of this dollhouse effect, and then there's cool online features with the game. It's once again another fully featured game that kind of incorporates single player and multiplayer, which you don't see too much from Nintendo in general. So it was a pleasant surprise for me too, and one of my favorite games of last year.
Also, another game from last year that was fantastic, and I definitely say is another must buy. Every game that I'm seeing listing here is definitely a must buy. I would say you should have them in your library. But The Legend of Zelda: Link Between Worlds, another terrifically designed game. Lots of depth, lots of extra areas that you can tackle the game in whatever order that you want, that you can rent items, that you can power up items, you can buy them. It just was fantastic, and it was a shakeup that the Zelda series has long been in need of. And for whatever reason, I have loved all the handheld Zelda titles. This one was no different, and it may be potentially one of my all-time favorite Zelda games. Period. It was just really great, nice storyline, cool little ending, nice little twist in the story.
Yeah,
So definitely recommend it.
the music's fantastic.
Oh
Once
yeah.
again, it feels so. Maybe it's because we've had so many 3D games and it was so long since we had the top-down perspective. It just feels so fast-paced, and talk about a palate cleanser. Even though I'm someone who really loves Skyward Sword, a Link Between Worlds, even though it was kind of a throwback using a Link to the Past overworld, it just felt like a brand new frontier for the Zelda series. Finally getting back to tackling dungeons in any order you wanted, all of these cool new weapons that you could pick up whenever you wanted. It was giving players back control kind of their adventure. And I think it gave that a little bit more of a personal touch. And once again just blew me away. Both those games, Luigi's Mansion and Zelda, I mean, these are well-respected series. They're a couple of Nintendo's top franchises. But and this is something that's probably changed. Whenever you see it's a handheld game, or whenever you see it being something that just looks like it's riffing off a previous game in the series, but how Nintendo was able to make them feel so fresh was just fantastic.
Well said. I appreciate you adding that on there because I hadn't thought of it, and it's definitely, those are all definitely good points to build on. And why you must have Zelda out there, everybody. Now, speaking of music, 3DS does have a number of music-based games, and I knew I definitely wanted to include at least one, but not show my music game fanboy card. I didn't want to overplay that. So out of the music games that are on there, and it was a tough choice, I would definitely say that Rhythm Thief and The Emperor's Treasure was terrific. And the reason that I like it so much is when you think of a music game, you think of a really hooky, addictive gameplay mechanic that's pretty straightforward, easy to understand, and you find it so addictive and so engaging that you can do it over and over and over, so long as the music is different and the backgrounds vary. That's how Guitar Hero is, that's how Rock Band is, that's how Theater Rhythm is. They have a few different ideas of rhythm games put out there, and you just grind through them over and over, and the music is so good, or the presentation is so great, or the nostalgia is so strong, it doesn't matter. It's totally fulfilling. But what I love about Rhythm Thief is it has a really interesting story, way more complicated and twisted, well, twisted's the wrong word, but labyrinth, I guess. Lots of little characters and mysteries woven throughout it. Way more story than you'd expect in a music game, but not only that, getting back to the gameplay tenet, there are so many different types of music games in there that you'll inevitably find ones that you really like. You'll find ones that are like, oh, this is so hard. I got to get through this so I can progress the story. But it just keeps mixing things up, both from a musical perspective, in terms of the styles of music that are presented, whether you're stroking your stylus back and forth on the 3DS screen to simulate playing a violin, or if you're tapping buttons to the beat and in kind of a Dance Dance Revolution type pattern, or actually something like Guitar Hero, or just other concepts that are failing my mind. There's actually a tribute to Samba de Amigo, no less, in there, where you're shaking maracas at different heights and you're doing poses. All these cool takes on rhythm games, all in one game, connected with a really interesting story where you're playing as a thief who's going around and robbing France of some of its most beloved treasures and pieces of art. And it's like, for what? What happens? And there's this big Leighton-esque supernatural sci-fi stuff that it builds up to, and it's just really cool. I can't recommend it enough if you haven't gotten a chance to play it.
Is this a game that's available on the eShop now?
I believe it was made available on the eShop, and I'm not sure if it's still out there. I'm fairly certain it is out there.
Now, I wonder what it's priced at, if it's at like a good price point now for people to pick it up, because that came out pretty soon in the 3DS's life cycle, if I'm not correct.
Yeah, it did. It did, and I really wish that Sega decided to make it into a franchise because it was a really solid start. And unfortunately, the past is littered with all these cool starts of music game franchises that we don't ever see sequels to. So if you're a fan of any level of the music game genre, definitely track down Rhythm Thief if you can get it digitally or physically. All right, 3 more games to go. Next one, as much as I'm against the overrepresentation of this game in Smash Brothers, I became a true fan of Fire Emblem with Fire Emblem Awakening. And I didn't think that I would even get into turn-based strategy. I'm much more of a real-time strategy game. And I set myself up for failure by insisting that I play it in classic mode, which means that characters can die and be lost forever. But these characters are so cool. They're just little snippets of characters in a way, but they all have really neat, distinct personalities, and seeing them interact with each other off the battlefield, or getting them to develop synergy by working together on the battlefield, helping each other out as a support, or vice versa. It's just so neat. But with that said, having gone through the game with the mandate of like, no, I love all these characters, they all have to survive, classic mode then becomes flawless victory mode, where you just keep turning your system off and starting over, and turning your system off, starting over, and starting to wonder, am I going to be able to even get past this battle? Because I keep dying, and I don't want to lose anybody. So my recommendation for Fire Emblem Awakening is, yes, definitely get it. Even if you've never tried Fire Emblem before, it is a great place to get involved, to jump in. It's got 2 characters in the upcoming Smash Brothers game, but it's got a decent learning curve, and you can turn off the character deaths. Do that. Save yourself the trouble, especially since when even the main producer or director of the game says, at first I was thinking, yeah, we're just doing this for newcomers so that they're not intimidated, but now even I play it with the deaths turned off. When the main creator of the game says that, you can't get a better justification or incentive to justify turning off the permanent character deaths.
Probably one of my favorite art designs in a game in the past few years, especially from Nintendo. Just gorgeous character portraits and everything. The 3D, the actual in-game 3D visuals are interesting because of the feet. They didn't do anything with the feet. They're just like on these sticks. But it creates this, like, once again, it works. It's striking in a way, but I just love the character designs throughout the game. It's just something that is all to itself. And I think the character designer for this game, I retweeted it out today, made a Super Smash Brothers poster with the new character reveals and everything.
Yeah.
That just looks absolutely amazing.
So
Fire Emblem Awakening, I don't have it on my list because shamefully I still haven't finished it. It's a game that I need to get back to and put the finishing touches on it. But it is just a great turn-based strategy game.
I have been hogging some of the time here from Evan, so I'm going to make my next 2 items relatively quick. Number 7 on my list is SteamWorld Dig, another must-have, incredible title that was exclusive for a time to Nintendo. It's available on the eShop. You definitely have to try it if you've ever loved Metroid, if you've ever played Dig Dug as a kid in the 80s and really liked that. If you liked Boulder Dash, there's a lot of games that it harkens back to. And it's just so well designed in that you start off with hardly any ability or stamina to stay underground. You run out of air, you run out of light, and you constantly have to keep going up. And yet little by little you start earning money and you can dive deeper and deeper. And there's a great mystery running through the game's storyline of what's going on down here. What are all these artifacts down here? Where did they come from? What is at the root of all of these monsters that are underground? And so you have a really killer gameplay hook, and that you can expand upon your character's abilities to go further and do more. And you want to just build out your map and complete things, but also solve the story and figure out what the mystery is. Well, you would serve yourself very well by getting this game. It's definitely one of my top favorites.
It is also on my list, and we keep talking about surprises. SteamWorld Dig, though, was a totally unexpected surprise. Came out of nowhere, this eShop game that ended up being one of the best games of last year as well. And there is no reason that you shouldn't have that on your 3DS system, especially if you're a Metroidvania fan at all. It's just this really cool, this core loop of digging, gaining more money, and then purchasing new items for your character, Rusty, and that goes on, and it just works. It can be a small burst thing that you pick up and play for 5 minutes, and you feel like you've actually gone somewhere and made progress, or it's a game that you could just sink. You could beat it in one sit through 4, 5, 6 hours because it's that just fun to play.
My last item, here's my cop-out item. And you'll know this if you've been listening to me talk over the years, but I'm also a huge fanboy for anything Phoenix Wright or Professor Layton related. And what's really fantastic is we've gotten terrific titles in both series. I thought we were only going to see Professor Layton games, and lo and behold, not only have we gotten 2 of those, but we got a digital-only new chapter in the Phoenix Wright saga, which is really exciting. And we're really going to get Professor Layton versus Phoenix Wright, which I know the reviews are very lukewarm on that title, but as a fanboy of both of those franchises, I cannot wait. And it's harder for me to say jump into Professor Layton I guess really to jump into Professor Layton with one of the 3DS games. I suppose you could do it because every game has a self-contained story that's pretty satisfying, But as a true fanboy, I would say, well, you need to start at least at the beginning of one of the trilogies because the two games that came out on 3DS were preceded by a game on the DS that started out that whole cycle of stories. Or wait for maybe a compilation with Phoenix Wright. You can get a compilation, but I'd also say you could potentially get into Phoenix Wright with the latest one that's on 3DS, and then that would whet your appetite for going and playing the trilogy that's coming up later this year. But if you love adventure games, if you love puzzles, brain teaser puzzles, definitely do Layton. Or if you like logic puzzles, more traditional adventure game exploration and puzzles that are related around dialogue, go with Phoenix Wright. But if you love really great stories, you can't go wrong. Either series has great stuff to be found, and both series also have excellent music. Phoenix Wright has some really great Mega Man style music, and the Professor Layton just has this moody, emotional music that usually features violin and piano, and it's just beautiful. And xylophone, bells, I guess, as well. So great. So that's my top 8. Evan?
Well, thanks, Noah. And we have quite a bit of crossover, so just to kind of show which titles are on both of our list, it starts with me for we both have A Legend of Zelda: A Link Between Worlds, Luigi's Mansion: Dark Moon, SteamWorld Dig, and Attack of the Friday Monsters. So 4 out of the same 8 games for 3DS. So that's a double endorsement. And that means you have to buy them now. But those are the games that obviously cater to more than just our personal taste, but I'm sure a lot of people out there. Possibly my favorite game, and one that I know Noah is not as big on, is Kid Icarus Uprising. We were talking about Sakurai and just the ability to put so much content in a game. I think Kid Icarus Uprising is one of the most fully packaged games from Nintendo on 3DS or Wii U. There's just this incredible single player, full of content, a fantastic narrative, and great writing, surprising twist along the ways, and just such varied stages that you go through. And then on top of this, you have this awesome multiplayer mode where you can play with anyone across the world. It's super quick, super fast, and it holds up. It's easy to play with friends. There's different game modes you can play. And I find the controls, yes, they are very unusual, and yes, there is a steep learning curve, but once you get the hang of them, it can make just for such a unique third-person shooting game that I just sunk a ton of time into, and it's one of my most played 3DS games, and I would love to see maybe an HD version of it on the Wii U, but talk about just bringing Kid Icarus back. This wasn't just some game where you used the old formula. This was totally rethinking the Kid Icarus formula and just creating, I think, the standout 3DS game in general. My next game is one that I'm surprised wasn't on Noah's list because I know he sunk 50, 60, even more hours into it, and that's Animal Crossing New Leaf. Just it felt like becoming the mayor was a refreshing way to kind of shake up the Animal Crossing formula. The visuals looks like they had been tweaked just enough where they looked fresh and didn't look like just a retread of the experience that we've had here in North America and Europe since the GameCube days. And the online play, it was fun. We had people share t-shirt designs with us or play with us online. And we got to go to the club and dance together, go fishing together. And it's those kind of social experiences that I feel like make it such a memorable game for your Nintendo handheld system.
I would have to agree with you that it is a fantastic title. There were 2 franchises that we jumped into finally with both feet on 3DS, and that was Animal Crossing and Pokemon. And of those 2, I definitely put a huge amount of time into Animal Crossing, and whereas my previous experiences with Animal Crossing, because I believe I got Wild World before, it was 15 minutes and I was done. I never touched it again. Whereas this one I put in dozens and dozens of hours. And coming out of that experience, I can say that I'm actually genuinely interested in playing another Animal Crossing game if one comes out, which I'm sure will. I'll seriously consider it. Whereas with Pokemon, it was cool, and I didn't get all the way through it. I put a decent chunk of time in there, but I didn't come out of that thinking, now I'm going to have to get the next game. I have to really seriously consider it. Animal Crossing, I did. It is a really well done evolution. It doesn't feel like a retread like some of the last Animal Crossing games were, and it's got enough extra gameplay to really keep you going through a very grindy, repetitive experience for quite a while. And sometimes just the novelty of that, or the small rewards that you get out of it by putting a little bit of time in it every day. There are people who listen to the show who I think have put in a good 200 hours or something like that. So it's definitely something that is good, but I didn't put it on my list because ultimately I just burned out on it, and I ended up feeling it was pretty shallow. But there is a lot of charm and a lot of personality in there. And if you've been on the fence, or if you've had a bad experience with Animal Crossing in the past, or if you haven't been impressed with it, this game could actually change your mind. It definitely did for me.
The next game is probably one of the first downloadable experiences that completely blew me away, and it was from Nintendo no less, and that's Pushmo. One of my favorite puzzle games for Nintendo's system, and a completely original game from Intelligent Systems. I love the push and pull block mechanics of Pushmo. I love the user-generated levels. I love Mallow, this just cute little chubby little person that's going up and solving these puzzles, and it was just the tutorial's heavy-handed and you kind of get bored with it at first, but once it opens up, you're just tackling these massive stages and you're tackling these old NES sprites. So Nintendo, as they do so well, has that little nostalgia hook in there, and I just found it a fantastic game, especially for less than $10.
Mm-hmm.
It also, it's not to sour it, but Crashmo is one of my least favorite and I think terrible Nintendo sequels ever. I was very, very upset with the direction that Crashmo went into. I haven't played Pokemon. I haven't played Pushmo World yet for Wii U, but that's something they'll have to look at in the future because Intelligent Systems did the smart thing and apparently just acted like Crashmo never happened and got back to the pure amazing mechanics of the first game. And finally, EAT Tokyo with Super Mario 3D Land. You've heard me talk about Super Mario 3D World, something feeling off. Super Mario 3D Land I thought was just the perfect 3D Mario on a handheld system, and it was so much fun. I played all the levels. You get to play as Luigi. The Tanuki suit comes back. They do a great job of mixing 2D with 3D, and that feels more at home on a handheld system on that smaller screen. It's not something I actually liked blown up on my 50-inch with Super Mario 3D World, but I absolutely adored 3D Land, and I think it was probably the first truly brilliant game released on the system, and I think it will stand the test of time.
Death marches aside.
But that is it for our Elite 8 3DS games. Be sure to let us know what your games are. But with that, let's get back to feedback from episode 25. Noah, take it away.
Okie dokie. First up, we have a couple emails to go through from Mario Man 311. I was very happy with Nintendo's E3 this year. Yoshi's Woolly World looks amazing, and I look forward to eating my friend's Yoshis and spitting them out over the edge.
That's fantastic.
So that means that we're not going to probably play with you. Captain Toad Treasure Tracker is already on my Christmas list, and I hope it is multiplayer compatible. I'm looking forward to playing Splatoon with friends, and the squid idea looks really original. Mario
Here,
Maker yeah. I have no argument from us on that. Mario Maker looks great, but the 2015 release date is disappointing. The new Zelda looks amazing, and I hope there's two-player co-op. There's a theme in this. It's co-op. Smash Brothers, he continues, is amazing. I went to the closest Best Buy that had the Smash Brothers demo and played the 3DS and Wii U versions. The 3DS version felt very fluid, and I look forward to picking it up day one. The Wii U version is even more satisfying than the 3DS version. The items look fresh and fun, the roster looks varied, and the stages find a balance between the competitive players and the casual players. I'm looking forward to the amiibo for Mario Kart and Smash Brothers. We still don't know how the Mario Kart figures will work, but the Smash Brothers figures look great, and their integration with the game is very ingenious. Mario Man 311. I have to say for the record that I hope that the fitness trainer is a playable character in Mario Kart, because that'd be kind of funny.
That'd be a funny DLC character. I can't see it happening, but maybe they'll have some kind of way of incorporating her into the game. But thanks especially Mario Man for sharing your impressions of Super Smash Brothers, because I don't think Noah or I were able to go and play it at Best Buy during E3.
No. Next up from Dylan L. Hello, Evan and Noah. I love the show and the effort you and all your fellow NFers put into Nintendo Force, both of this show and the magazine. Please keep up the amazing work.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm one of those old timers who grew up on Nintendo Power and was so disappointed when it went under. I now have 2 sons, aged 3 and 1, and you guys provide hope that they too will be able to enjoy Nintendo magazines in the mail for years to come. Thank you. That's very cool. I really enjoyed your top 5 Wii U games lists and a couple shows back, and it got me to wondering about a list of a different kind. Everyone knows the Virtual Console could be better. If you could see the release of 5 Virtual Console titles, what would they be? Well, guess what? Dylan L. also has his own list. They are number 5, Bionic Commando for NES, not just the rearmed updates. Number 4, Rygar for NES. Excellent title, I agree. Rygar's awesome. Number 3, Contra NES. Why do they keep giving us its sequel, Super C, but not the original? I'm totally with you on that. Number 2, Star Fox SNES. Conquer that FX ship, he wrote. And number 1, his number 1 thing you'd like to see in the Virtual Console library is anything from the GameCube library, which I agree. I think we would all like to see that. That there's definitely a big gap between the games that he requested in 5 through 2 and the item in number 1. You jump from Super Nintendo all the way to GameCube. But yeah, I really want to see more of both Nintendo 64 and anything from GameCube. Well, maybe not anything from GameCube. How about you, Evan?
My top 5, this will be tough off the top of my head. One of them will definitely be Baseball Stars. It's one of my favorite retro baseball games for the NES, where you can like buy players, you can create your own team. So it was very a pretty revolutionary back in the 1980s and early 1990s. I would love to see Tecmo Super Bowl with current rosters, which I know probably can't happen because of the NFL contract, but that was one of my favorite Nintendo and Super Nintendo series. I would love to see Blast Corps from Rare. I think that's just a fantastic Nintendo 64 game. I'd also like to see any of the WWF, which is now WWE wrestling games from the Nintendo 64 days. I have such fond memories playing those with 4 people, and it'd be cool if they could keep the same rosters or maybe do a mix of the old and new rosters, but I know these games are licensing nightmares, so a couple of these I picked, or 3 of the 4 so far that I picked, are probably going to be tough. Probably the Rare game's going to be tough as well. I don't know where Blast Corps falls in line with who exactly owns that series. And for a 5th one, let's go with a GameCube game. Let's go with Eternal Darkness, since I think that's such a fantastic and weird experience that Nintendo published back, I believe, in 2002. Which I really enjoyed. A really freaky game with a great storyline. So those are my 5 VC titles. What about you, Noah?
Well, I would definitely agree with you on Eternal Darkness, since I never got through it, and Blast Corps, because man, that game just was so addictive. Even though the human characters in it looked so freaky, because Rare, I think, essentially just took its Donkey Kong ape models and then made them into pseudo-humans, and they look really creepy. There's a quote that I still say to this day from that game, and I think it was voice acted. There was a few little voice acting clips in there, and it was, "Show me what you got!" And I still say, "Show me what you got!" As my tribute to Blast Corps. So those are the 2 games I'm going to put out there. I'm not going to go any further. I want to get through some more of the feedback. We have comments to get through before we wrap up. From Benjamin A. I do not think Nintendo platforms need Twitch. I personally find the website and apps cumbersome and just unappealing. Also, when everyone starts streaming their gameplay, it makes it feel less special. Benjamin, you would be a perfect employee for Nintendo with that line. Because I think Nintendo said pretty much the exact same thing, is that they don't think that there's anything really noteworthy to promote by having Twitch on the system. Benjamin continues, there was a comment in this episode mentioning being able to purchase games from an external source, like a smartphone, and having them be downloaded on the device, like your console, by the time you get home. I thought this was something in the works whenever Nintendo released their official app. I mean, PS3, a last generation console, can do this via the PS app. Frustrating for sure. I do hope the next Nintendo Direct focuses a little on the company's official app. Benjamin?
Yeah, the app, Nintendo's talked about that in the past, but recently when they've talked about their official app and they've kind of acted like it's an all-in-one app, they've talked about it being used for marketing and getting people more involved with games. And Mario Kart TV, in a way, was kind of like referred as what they're thinking about with their app. So it's really kind of this weird situation where I feel like Nintendo's not quite sure what they're doing with the app, and it's changing all the time. I personally don't get. I'm kind of like you, I think, Benjamin, where I don't get why isn't there just a dedicated eShop app where it's like you touch that icon, you go to the eShop, you can download stuff, and then you can have the Nintendo app. But it sounds like Nintendo wants to incorporate this all together, which is fine. But the other thing about apps are they're free and they're updated often. So I don't know why Nintendo hasn't at least gotten something out there, because app development is so iterative. And I know that's different from Nintendo and what it does with its console games, but when you see almost every other major game coming out have a companion app and be ready in time, and we see Nintendo still not able to get off the ground here in 2014, no less, it just makes me shake my head, honestly.
Our next comment is from Tara SC, who wrote in, I really didn't like Majora's Mask, so I hope that isn't remade, as it would be a waste of time to me. My favorite Zelda game is A Link to the Past, so the evolution of that series would be a lot better, for me anyway. Also, I have Tomodachi Life now, and OMG, I'm so addicted to this game. Why? And Tara mentioned to me, we discussed getting Tomodachi Life, and I remain definitely in the no camp, but I'm glad to hear that Tara got it and is totally addicted to it, which is cool. So maybe, like with Sonic Tonic, we'll get some awesome screenshots of weird, quirky things going on and her copy of the game. But
I'd also like to hear from Tara, if she gets a chance, why, if she can explain why she does like it and why it is so addictive, and some of the funny experiences, like you said, she's encountered.
yeah, definitely. I wonder if she's put us in her game like Sonic Tonic has. Because I love those screenshots that he tweets to us. Next up from Nintendo Dude GCN. I definitely still think Majora's Mask 3D is not out of the question. The job opening at Grezzo seems like a definite indicator. Maybe I'm just being overly hopeful for my favorite Legend of Zelda game, though. As for the new ideas for Zelda on 3DS, which is something we mentioned last week, I'm not really sure what to expect there. I really, really enjoyed A Link Between Worlds, so if Nintendo went down a similar route there, I would probably be happy. Also,
I love his comment coming right after Tara's on how much he loves Majora's Mask.
Perfect timing. There are people who love it, and there are definitely a few out there who do not like it. I am one of the big-time fans of Majora's Mask, so I'm right there with you, Nintendo Dude. Nintendo Dude continues. Also in the shareholders Q&A, I noticed Nintendo pointing out that they would be utilizing mobile devices, smart devices, and social networks more, quite a few times. What are your thoughts on this? Do you think it will be a big leap forward into the current times for the company?
I kind of addressed this earlier with the earlier comment and feedback, but I think it's just going to bring functionality that's available on other platforms. I think they could do some cool marketing / games, and Nintendo could add a unique spin there, but honestly, I just want the basic functionality at this point. Hopefully we'll be surprised, but I wouldn't hold your breath.
Next up, Link Chef wrote in, I admit, I really hope at least a dedicated Twitch app comes to Wii U. I know you can watch it on the browser, but something about an actual programmed hardware app just screams, we care. But if I remember the comments by Reggie, he doesn't understand why Twitch is so big. Link Chef.
It makes me think you had Evo with Super Smash Bros. Melee being played, and if there was a Twitch app, I was thinking about how Nintendo could have sent that little notification to your gamepad screen, and it just says, like, watch Super Smash Bros. Melee and get prepared for the new game. Like, tap this to go into your Twitch app and watch now. I'm confident. I'm somewhat confident that at least a Twitch streaming app will come to Wii U at some point.
Well, I love your optimism, Evan. I think it's not coming until the next system, but we'll see. One of us will be right. One of us will be so wrong.
Just an app to watch stuff, not even to be streaming. You could be right, by the way. I feel like We haven't got any new streaming apps since the launch of the console, basically. So who knows?
Our final comment is from Kisagi Project. Kisagi Project wrote, I agree with Evan.
Yeah. That's it. I agree
Which
with Evan.
maybe I should just start eliminating comments that start with that. Because everybody agrees with Evan, and nobody ever makes a point of agreeing with Noah, and Noah doesn't like
Aw.
that. No, I'm just kidding. That's not true. People have agreed with me in the past, and I'm just giving Evan a hard time because I tease him about this off the show and on the show, and so that tradition, I have to fulfill it. Kisaki Project continues. I felt both Super Mario 3D World and Mario Deathmatch March 3D Land were lacking compared to 64, Sunshine, Galaxy 1, and Galaxy 2. Don't get me wrong, I really enjoyed 3D World and playing it with my girlfriend, but it lacked the majesty of the others. Honestly, I think that it's the little diorama levels don't belong in a big screen. It made sense in 3D Land, but underwhelmed in 3D World. But I also was a bit disappointed by the switch back to the old school level-based system. I much preferred the hub world of Galaxy 1 and Mario 64. Kisaki Project.
I agree with those points. I think also we haven't had a Mario game that's focused on single player since Galaxy 2 or since 3D Land and Galaxy 2, and I feel like Nintendo needs to deliver on that because you can have, like you said, the majesty, you can have kind of the extravagance, the volcanoes blowing up, these like really big moments that only work on kind of like a streamlined single player approach.
And I also agree with missing the hub worlds. I was a little bit disappointed. I was saying disappointed with Galaxy 2 using a traditional stage select screen because just being able to run around the spaceship in Galaxy 1 and being able to jump around everywhere was really cool, and it just adds a little bit of extra something to it that makes it all the more compelling. But that said, that is an end of our feedback for last week. Thank you to everyone who took the time to write in, either writing in comments below the video, our YouTube channel is youtube.com/nfmagazine, or sending in emails. You're all encouraged to do that. And also you can tweet us too, because after all, that is where we got our request from Alex. He requested that after we talked about our top 5 Wii U games, talk about our top 5 3DS games. So feel free to suggest topics that you would like us to discuss on the show. You can do all of that via any of our methods of feedback, and we look forward to hearing from you. Evan?
Thank you so much, Noah, for going through that fantastic feedback. Thank you all for joining us on episode 26 of Top This. Don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube or on iTunes, and please give us a review on iTunes if you get the chance. And like Noah said, on Twitter, you can follow him at This Is Noah. You can follow me at Evan Campbell. And finally, you can follow NF Magazine at Nintendo Force, because this is NF Magazine's official video show and podcast. That's it for this week. We can't wait to come back next week to talk about all the latest news, all the latest games, and who knows what else. Maybe even a Nintendo Direct if he wishes hard enough each night.
And also, we do have Lucas on the show next week, so if you have any questions for the founder and editor-in-chief of NF Magazine, send those in too.
Yeah, we're going to hopefully discuss what has gone into making the latest issue of NF Magazine. So if you have any questions about what goes into those magazines and how they get to your mailboxes or onto your computer through the viewing app for each issue, you can send those in as well. But thank you so much, Noah, for joining me this week on the NF show, and we'll be back in just 1 week's time. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye, everybody.